Yeah, this is the Weird Christian. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of thinking. I'm going to make it as simple as possible, but let's see if you can follow this. Is God infinite, or is God the first cause? Can both be true? So many people will think that they don't see that there's a problem there, but I'm going to discuss that there might be a problem here. Okay. Okay. And it's a problem of mixing up where quantities, numbers, with what is quality, love or softness or charity, those are qualities. Numbers are like 4 and infinite. Okay, can you mix those up and say they're the same thing? And is that what is happening when one says one's a first cause and one says God is an infinite? Okay, so now here I just want to make it kind of very apparent that numbers do not have quality. So you can't just say 4 is equal to true. There has to be more to it than that. Or you could say 5 is equal to true, or 6 is equal to false. Those are not um, congruent ideas. They're just a disconnect. They're not something that you can equate unless you're making some assumptions to prove something else, but then you're working with ideas. You're not just working with numbers. And I know equations can be kind of like an idea, okay? But I know there's kind of ways you can go around that in an idea, but I'm just trying to say, let's try to be congruent in our thoughts. Congruent means kind of connect things up, okay? Now, finite is um, a limited space, and infinite is without boundaries, okay? Now, and spirit, is a spirit finite, infinite? I guess you could say, I'm just doing a lot of brainstorming, like you could say that we are finite spirits because we have a beginning and an end. We're not an infinite spirit. But uh, but I really wanted to, which is giving a number to a spirit, a limit to a spirit, saying it's either infinite or finite. You're giving a number to it. I guess you could give a number to people. It could be 56478Z2 or something like that. And you can do that. You can use numbers to label um, things. I understand that. But um, they're not the same. Like a consciousness and a spirit is not the same as a number like 4 or 5. They're not the same. You can't measure spirit or consciousness. It's not something in the material world. So the basic point I'm trying to say is that when you call God infinite, you're trying to make him material. In fact, I think that logically you would bring the idea of material, as God is material, as a material God. You start calling him infinite. And some people say, well, God can do anything. Well, a God that can do anything, would be a God that could lie, could change its mind, could be anything that it wants to be at any time. Is that the God in the Bible? No. It's a God of, even from the very beginning, of making boundaries and limits. And by the words that God says, he limits himself to those words. He cannot lie. So we have a God that is not an infinite God. An infinite God would be a God that could turn a square and a circle. They wouldn't be the same thing. They would just say they're the same thing. And it could do anything. Good and bad can be anything. That, that it's a God that can do anything. It can lift a stone that's too heavy for it. It's an idea of not being rational, an infinite God. Because a God that can do anything is not a rational God. It's an insane God. It's a God that merges everything together into one. Anyway, and yet God is not finite either. God is a quality. Because God, these are ideas of numbers, finite and infinite. They're not ideas of really a quality. They only become a quality if you attach it to a quality, like a finite spirit or an infinite spirit. And I would say an infinite spirit would be a God that can do anything. It would be an infinite spirit, which would mean it could lie. It doesn't have to hold to itself. It doesn't believe in limits, no boundaries. It'd be rude and offensive to us, and that would be fine. An infinite God would be everywhere and in everything, and we would just be imaginations. We're not distinct from God, from an infinite God. And maybe you don't think that way. I think that's where you go when you say God is infinite. So here's the idea of regression, infinite regression. Basically, when you try to focus on the head keeps moving back, keeps moving back. So you never really see the face of that person because it goes off into an infinite regression. And an infinite regression can never actually be said to be a statement of truth. Even in calculus, what you do is you say it's limited. As it approaches infinity, something may either become 0 or 1. So, but you never actually see the number. You never actually know the number. And it's a number system. When you can't say it's true or false. Numbers, you don't say they're true or false. They're just numbers. So, my point is that first cause is a quality of God. It means that nothing created God. And it was funny that in the definition of first cause that a friend of mine looked up, it said the created idea of the thing before everything. Well, then you're making a cause already. Somebody threw that in as an idea of a first cause, because basically there's an idea behind that, is that our mind can create universe and our mind can create reality. And so our mind created first cause, which is an irrational thought. But the point is that first cause is a quality. Nothing created first cause. And in the Bible, when it talks about eternal, it's talking about qualities, not quantities. This is eternal life. eternal life, to know Jesus Christ and the Father who sent him, or to know the Father and Jesus Christ whom thou hast sent. I think that's how it goes. And this is eternal life, to know the Father and Jesus Christ whom thou hast sent. So these are people to know, which is a quality. It doesn't say, and this is eternal life, infinite days or infinite time. It doesn't say that. And that would be irrational covering the Bible anyway. And it would be irrational for our logic about even the universe as we understand it. Time is finite. So if it was infinite time, then would there even be time in a sense? Because you never really start. It would be everything just blurred together maybe. I don't know. It's an interesting concept since it never exists. But anyway. Okay, so those are crazy ideas I'm just talking about. But the biggest point is that can God be infinite, or is God the first cause? And can both be true? And I say no. They're two different ideas. One is about numbers, one is about quality. One's about quantity, one's about quality. They're not in the same category. And infinite, it's also without boundaries. It's always one more. So basically an infinite God can do anything, which means he can lift a stone that's too heavy for him. There's no limits. He can do anything. And that's not the God in the Bible. So it's a pantheistic God, actually. A God where we are just the imaginations of the God in the universe. We're just part of it. And much like the Matrix, to realize that we're, in a sense, in the Matrix, you realize you're just you're just part of the universe. You're just everything's mixed, even the different levels are all mixed together. Everything's mixed. You're just an imagination of the one, which doesn't really have an imagination. It's just all crazy. It's insanity. Anyway, I'm leaving that with you. May God bless you and give you peace.